Welcome to Fluid and Formless Studios. I'm John Lozano. Today I want to share with you an idea. It's an idea that if you take the time to understand it, can radically transform how you approach Lindy Hop and can exponentially expand your repertoire. In this video, you're not going to see dancing. You're going to see a way to think about dancing. It can help you to see inside a fancy flashy move that you might see in a competition or on some other YouTube channel. What is this method called, you'd say? I call it the breakdown of the swing out. I call it the breakdown of the swing out. Now, people smarter than me might have different names for it. A biologist might call it Lindy morphology. An engineer might call it the exploded view of the swing out. A chemist might call it the periodic table of Lindy elements. An artist might call it a palette of all the swinging colors. If I ever get smart, I'll let you know. Consider this. Most classes you've attended are ones where you show up, you work on the basic footwork, and then you learn a few moves or variations, and maybe they might bundle it together in a cute little choreography. Let's say you continue to take that class and your teachers are creative enough to introduce new moves each week. How long do you think it's going to be before you start forgetting them? If you got 4 new moves each week in just about 6 months, you'd have 100 moves to remember. If your classes and learning are always focused on new moves, there will be a point at which it will be impossible for you to remember it all. Since our memories have a max capacity, doesn't it make sense to figure out what is most fundamental? To untangle and simplify things in such a way that can let our limited memory serve us better? Does it make sense to remember 4 whole moves when you could remember 4 variables that could multiply out into many more moves? By looking at the parts that make a move unique and asking some basic questions about it, the breakdown method gives you access to all the different ways you can use it. Now I know what you're thinking. Let's abandon all the other classes to study this amazing breakdown. Don't do it. The breakdown needs you taking those other classes for context, practice, and to make sense of it. The more material and comfort you develop in your Lindy Hop, the more you can make use of this method. And once you've internalized this breakdown, there will be no more disjointed, move-to-move, hunt and peck style dancing. No more getting stuck in 4 or 5 move loops. No more getting caught off guard when the music makes an unexpected change. And no more having to stop and reset because something went wrong. You'll be able to make the most of your creativity and instincts. You'll be able to strategize and create moves on and off the dance floor. You'll be able to flow from one move to the next. You'll be able to feel confident in expressing the music in a way that feels natural for your body. You'll be able to use your creative voice and understand your partners in a conversational dance. You'll be able to transform missteps into new opportunities. And most importantly, you'll be able to remain present in the music and enjoy dancing with your partner. Okay, is that enough talking about it? Do you want to get into it? Let's go! The first thing we need to do is to think about how the swing out looks. It's essentially a move where partners trade places twice, going from open position to closed position back to open. Now let's think about the first variable. It's a conceptual one, timing. If we were to reframe the swing out a little, instead of thinking the swing out is one really complex 8-count move, we could say that the swing out is made up of 2 4-count passes. The first 4-count pass takes you from open to closed position, and the second 4-count pass takes you from closed position back to open. This timing variable is amazing. It acknowledges that there's a certain symmetry to the swing out. If you can make sense of it, it effectively doubles the opportunities that you have to create variations with all your favorite moves. Let's take a look into some of the other variables now to see how some of these things work together. Lindy Hop has arguably one of the most difficult basic steps out there. Let's take a second to acknowledge and appreciate that to be able to do it at all is no small feat. And bravo to anyone who can even kinda do it. Why is it so difficult? It's difficult because the swing out is 8 counts jam-packed with a complex set of choices. The 3 variables we'll look at next are these choices. The first of these choice variables occurs around 1 and 2. Maybe you're thinking the choice around 1, 2 might be the rock step? That would be close. It's not whether or not we're rock stepping, but rather what we plan to do with that, directionally. More specifically, it's the choice that you use the 1 and 2 counts to have you and your partner passing each other on the right side. This may not seem like a choice at all because from the start of learning Lindy, it's ingrained into our little dance brains that this is the way. But rest assured, it's choice. Just look at any Lindy competition and I'm sure you'll see somebody at some point doing a reverse swing out. What makes it a reverse swing out? Passing on the left. Aha! So it can be done. Maybe this isn't so completely unusual. Okay, now we know we can use left side passes along with right side passes on the 1 and 2. So let's combine our first 2 variables. If we combine this idea with our timing variable from before, then we see we have two opportunities each swing out to pass on the left instead of the traditional right side. These four options I call the four basic swing outs. If you want to see how these timing and directional variables look, please check out our first video, the right and left game. I'll leave a link in the description below. Alright, now think back to your first Lindy series. After you learn the swing out, there's a fair number of possible moves that typically come next. One that is almost guaranteed to happen by the end of that series is a swing out with a follows inside turn. Question: what is the difference between a swing out and a swing out with a follows inside turn? Correct. One has a follows inside turn. Now that we've isolated what makes that move unique, let's break it down by asking another question. What are the parts that make up the follows inside turn? There's two. There's the follow and then the inside turn. Good, you're catching on. Now that we know what makes up the move, we can ask questions about those parts. First, what if it's not the follow turning? Next, what if it's not an inside turn? If we're just talking about simple single solo turns, if it's not a follow turning and it's not nobody turning, then it's going to be a leader turning. I call this the who turns variable. Second, what if it's not an inside turn? If it's not an inside turn, then it's an outside turn. I call this the rotation variable. Let's take a look at how this plays out with all these variables in play now. Let's use the swing out with a follows outside turn as our example now. And let's toggle each of these variables on and off to see how you can use the breakdown method to work with another move that you might want to investigate and play with. If we were to toggle our first variable, the timing variable, that would change the turn on the second half of the swing out to a turn on the first half of the swing out. If we were to toggle our second variable, the directional variable, that would change it from a turn that happens on the right side to a turn that happens on the left side. If we toggle our third variable, the who turns variable, that would change this follows outside turn to a leads outside turn. And lastly, if we toggle our fourth variable, the rotational variable, that would change our outside turn into an inside turn. Are you starting to see how this method can be used to expand and build your repertoire? Alright, that's it. We have 4 variables now. That's so much. So if we only use these 4 variables and combine them in every single way, how many total combinations do you think we can make with all of them? Are you ready for this? 100 combinations. How is that possible? Let's take a look. Here it is. 100 expressions of simple single solo turns. It looks like a jumble, and yet somehow so organized and intriguing. Ooh la la. So, what are we looking at? On the right, you'll see a giant box. This is the variations table, and it contains your first 100 swing out expressions. Inside this giant box are 25 medium boxes. Each of these boxes contain a set of 4 right and left swing out variations with some combination of turns. Inside those 25 medium boxes are 4 rows. Each of these rows is 1 swing out and turn variation. Inside each of those 4 rows are 4 boxes. Each of those boxes just represent a period of 2 counts in a swing out. Here's the thing, this whole table represents an idea. Please don't take what you see here too literally. The 2 count timing of each of these boxes isn't meant to indicate that a turn or traveling direction is started and completed within that time. If a follow does an inside turn while passing on the right, it will always be a half turn. If a follow does an inside turn while passing on the left, it will always be a turn and a half. And it's the opposite for outside turns. So the timing of each of these moves will have to be factored in when you're working out how to do each of these variations. Also, every move needs prepping before, takes a different amount of time to do, and will flow into and influence what comes next. Every choice you make will open some doors and close others. And let's not forget the most obvious truth. Different people in different bodies swing out differently. Some leads rock step on the 1-2, some draw straight back. Some follows come in quickly, some add stretch. Some leads use counterbalance, some don't. Some follows love to just go with the flow, while others generously share their voice and creativity. Every little thing that you do affects how you might achieve any of these variations. So understand that this table shines light on what is possible. You, the dancer, will have to consider how to tailor these ideas into your own dance. I'd like to take a minute now to point out some of the major sections of this table, because I think it helps to have some points of reference when looking at it. In the first box in the top left, you'll find the 4 swing out variations with no turns. These are the variations we covered in our first video, the right and left game. As I mentioned before, you can find a link for this in the description below. All of the other 24 medium boxes contain the same 4 rows with right and left options, and also contain some turn options. The boxes along the top and to the right of that first box contain the set of 4 swing outs with turns on the second half of the swing out. The boxes along the left and below that first box contain the set of 4 swing outs with turns that happen on the first half of the swing out. The remaining 16 boxes contain that same set of 4 swing outs, but with a combination of first and second half turns. If this whole thing is confusing you at all, that's okay, just keep this in mind. This table expresses possible choices. When you're swinging out with your partner and you want to execute one of these 100 variations, it will happen, because as long as you're swinging out, every 4 counts, you can make a choice to pass your partner on the right or left side, to turn or not to turn, to have that turn be a follows turn or a lead turn, and to make that turn an inside turn or an outside turn. So the opportunities for these moves are constantly opening themselves up to you as you go from first half of the swing out to second half of the swing out, from one swing out to the next. Hopefully knowing that will make this whole idea feel a little bit more accessible to you. Now that we're understanding and hopefully feeling a little bit better about this table now, let's highlight some other sections we can make use of. We've already touched on the main 4. If you want to treat this a little differently, you can also look at sections like all the swing outs that have lead turns, all the swing outs that have follow turns, all of the swing outs where both partners get a turn, swing outs that just have one short turn, swing outs that have just one long turn, swing out variations that have 2 short turns, swing outs that have 2 long turns, and swing out variations that have both one short turn and one long turn. So what exactly is a short and long turn? To put it simply, a short turn is a half of a rotation, and a long turn is 1.5 rotations. There's so much I could say about short and long turns when putting it into the context of a swing out, but it's not the point of this video, which just means it's perfect for another breakdown video. So a lot comes down to if and how you want to use this method and table. You could treat it like these are the possible results when you experiment with these variables, in which case this table can act like a checklist or a bingo card for you. You could even print it up and throw darts at it to select what you want to focus on today. You can also treat it like a training guide, in which case you can choose a variable or a section that you want to work on and then practice all the variations. You could choose to do only reverse swing outs with their turn variations, or rejections or exceptions with their turn variations. Or if you prefer not to switch up your right and left side, you could still choose to practice the traditional swing outs with its turn variations. Just using the 3 remaining variables, the timing variable, the who turns variable, and the rotation variable, you still have 25 expressions to work on. Not bad. Now hold up, what was that I just said about rejection and exception? Here we get into our last talking point. Name it. Name it. Name the thing. When I was developing this method, I learned the hard way that calling out right side, left side every 4 counts was exhausting. So if a move doesn't already have a name and it's too complex to describe, name it. And be upfront that you're naming it. But don't get too attached to that name, because chances are you're not the only one who's spontaneously creating that move. On paper, and for the purposes of these videos, I'll use labels like these moving forward. For the 4 basic swing out variations, there's the swing out, the rejection, the exception, and the reverse. Full disclosure, I did not name the rejection. It was a move I learned from somebody else. It's been so long, I don't know who at this point, and it was considered its own move and not a swing out variation like I consider it now. And over the years, I found a number of people who taught this with different names. I call it the rejection because it's just the first one I learned it as. The exception, on the other hand, I did name. That spelling was just my way of easing the tension around the other one being called rejection. And it's funny. Alright, so we're getting back to the labels. First one, we have swing outs with a turn, which just means you have a swing out variation with turns on the second half. Examples of this could be a swing out with a follows inside turn, or an exception with a leads outside turn. Turning swing outs. These are swing outs with turns on the first half. Some examples of these would be leads inside turn swing out, or a follows outside turn rejection. Then we have our swing out combinations. These would be swing outs with turns on both the first and second half of the swing out. Examples of this would be a follows outside turn swing out with a leads inside turn, or a leads outside turn reverse with a follows outside turn. What do you think? Can you think of another way to describe the moves that fit this breakdown method? Leave a description in the comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Alright, now for some final thoughts. I love charting things out this way, so you can swap out other core components of Lindy moves. You could do one that combines different uses of open and closed position, handholds, or more complex turns like double turns or barrel turns. I don't think, however, this table method will work well for adding in more than just a few ideas at a time. If we added in components for all the ways we could turn, this chart would be obscenely big. With just 4 variables, we got 100 different expressions. Do you have other ideas of how to recreate this so that we can easily add more components? Do you have other thoughts or questions about this breakdown method? I'd love to hear from you. Please leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. One last thing, I have also created a breakdown for following. It's so fundamentally different than this one, and it doesn't have a fancy table, but I'm currently working on how to display it differently now that these videos are rolling. I'm actually really looking forward to making a video about following, as well as leading too. Leading, by the way, does not have to equate to move making. I have a ton of other ideas I want to break down with you, and I'm super excited to make these videos. But before I get to any of those, I plan to put out a few shorter videos that shows actual dancing of all the ideas from this video. So please, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and if you really want to see this channel grow, you can share the video with somebody who you think might like it. Alright, that's all for now. Love you guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!